In a bold and unexpected move, Ghana's newly elected President John Mahama has left ECOWAS leadership in shock with a dramatic policy shift following his visit to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These three nations, having broken away from ECOWAS, accused the bloc of serving foreign interests and instead formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. To fully grasp the weight of this development, we must rewind to just a week prior. Before embarking on his tour of the Sahel nations, Mahama met with Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara, who urged him to engage with the breakaway states in an attempt to reintegrate them into ECOWAS. Mahama, appearing diplomatic, told Ouattara to exercise patience as he sought a way to work with them until they returned to constitutional democracy. Yet, what followed was anything but an attempt to bring these countries back into the ECOWAS fold. On Saturday, March 8, 2025, President Mahama landed in Bamako, where he held talks with Mali's leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta. In a significant declaration, Mahama stated that ECOWAS and AES could coexist without interference. To cement this position, he signed agreements with Mali to open an Accra-Bamako trade corridor, allowing Mali to import essential goods through Ghana's ports. His diplomatic offensive continued the next day, March 9th, in Niamey, where he met with Niger's General Abdourahmane Tiani. There, the two leaders signed an economic partnership focusing on security cooperation, unimpeded trade, and regional stability. Mahama emphasized the importance of recognizing AES and strengthening joint counterterrorism efforts, arguing that the threat of terrorism is not just a Sahelian problem, but one that also affects Ghana and the broader West African region. The final stop on Mahama's tour was Ouagadougou on March 10th, where he met with the young and fiery Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Here, Mahama proposed opening a daily Accra-Ouagadougou flight and constructing an oil and gas pipeline to facilitate trade, given Burkina Faso's current exclusion from Ivorian ports. Traoré agreed, marking a major victory for both nations, while Côte d'Ivoire found itself on the losing end. Mahama said, "Our objective is to facilitate the free movement of goods and people, and ensure the seamless transit of Burkina Faso's merchandise through the Ghana corridor." In the end, Mahama did not bring AES back into ECOWAS. Instead, he secured economic partnerships and a shared security vision with the breakaway states, directly contradicting Ouattara's wishes. So the burning question remains, did President Mahama fool Alassane Ouattara? Oh, he most certainly did. If the Ivorian satrap Ouattara played the fool, Mahama proved himself the master strategist. He understands that geopolitics is not just about loyalty to outdated alliances, it is about securing tangible benefits for the people of Ghana and the region. Unlike Ouattara, who remains shackled to external influences, Mahama has demonstrated that African nations can forge their own paths, where business and politics are wisely separated when necessary. As the dust settles, one thing is clear, Mahama's bold pivot may signal the dawn of a new West African geopolitical order, one not dictated by Paris, Washington, or Brussels, but by Accra, Bamako, Niamey, and Ouagadougou. Before we continue, hit that like and subscribe button. And now let us dig deeper to uncover the full implications of this power shift. Across the vast and vibrant tapestry of Africa, a seismic shift is reverberating through the Sahel, sending ripples of hope and defiance to every corner of the continent. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, having severed ties with the economic community of West African states, a regional bloc long heralded as a beacon of unity and economic integration in West Africa, have forged the alliance of Sahel states. This bold new confederation is rooted in sovereignty, self-determination, and a rejection of neo-colonial shackles. For many Africans, this move is not merely a geopolitical realignment, it is a clarion call for the liberation of the continent from external domination and the reassertion of African agency. Yet, as ECOWAS leaders like Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara push figures like Ghana's President John Mahama to engage these nations, a curious twist emerges. Mahama, despite his diplomatic visits, refrains from demanding their return to ECOWAS. Is this a sign of genuine Pan-African respect for their choice, or is ECOWAS under pressure from France, orchestrating a subtle campaign to reel them back into the fold? The answers lie in the hearts of Africans who see the AES as a long overdue stand against a compromised system. The decision by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to exit ECOWAS has ignited celebrations not only in the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey, but also in the minds of Africans from Lagos to Nairobi, Cairo to Cape Town. For too long, ECOWAS has been perceived as a tool of Western interests, particularly those of France, the former colonial master whose influence still looms large over West Africa. The bloc's response to the coups that swept these nations between 2020 and 2023, imposing crippling sanctions, threatening military intervention, and demanding a return to civilian rule, reeked of hypocrisy to many. While ECOWAS preached democracy, it turned a blind eye to the failures of civilian governments plagued by corruption, insecurity, and subservience to foreign powers. The juntas, led by figures like Burkina Faso's captain Ibrahim Traoré, Mali's colonel Assimi Goïta, and Niger's general Abdourahmane Tiani, have tapped into a deep well of frustration, promising to prioritize the needs of their people over the dictates of external actors. For Pan-Africanists, this exit is a triumph of self-reliance. The AES represents a rejection of the neo-colonial yoke that has kept Africa tethered to the whims of Paris, Washington, and their proxies in regional bodies like ECOWAS. In Burkina Faso, Traoré's expulsion of French troops and his embrace of local solutions to combat jihadist insurgencies have inspired a generation weary of foreign military bases dotting the continent. In Mali, the shift toward partnerships with Russia and other non-Western powers signals a break from the suffocating grip of France's Operation Barkhane, which arguably exacerbated rather than resolved insecurity. Niger's expulsion of French uranium companies and its demand for fair resource control echo the cries of Patrice Lumumba and Thomas Sankara, heroes whose visions of economic independence were snuffed out by imperial machinations. Across Africa, social media platforms buzz with hashtags like AES Rising and Africa. For Africans as citizens, hail the trio's courage to chart a path free from the old gods playbook. The economic implications further fuel this enthusiasm. ECOWAS, with its $702 billion market and visa-free travel, was once a symbol of regional unity. But for landlocked Sahel states, the benefits were uneven, often favoring coastal giants like Nigeria and Ivory Coast, while leaving nations like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger economically marginalized. The AES's plans for a common passport, joint military force, and localized trade networks promise a system tailored to the Sahel's unique needs, arid landscapes, nomadic traditions, and a shared struggle against terrorism. Africans see this as a model for regional cooperation that doesn't sacrifice sovereignty on the altar of globalization, a sentiment echoed by scholars like Dr. Amina Diop of Senegal's Cheikh Anta Diop University, who told this correspondent, "The AES is proof that Africa can build its own institutions free from the blueprint of colonial architects." Yet, as the AES gains traction, ECOWAS leaders scramble to salvage their crumbling bloc. Ivory Coast's President Alassane Ouattara, alongside Nigeria's Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has been vocal in urging Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to reconsider their exit. Ouattara's March 6, 2025 plea, alongside Ghana's John Mahama, for the trio to rejoin the West African family, was framed as a call for unity, but to Pan-Africanists, it reeks of desperation and French fingerprints. France, with its economic lifeline tied to West Africa's resources, notably Niger's uranium, and the region's CFA franc currency, stands to lose significantly if the AES consolidates its independence. ECOWAS, long seen as a stabilizing force for French interests, has been a key player in maintaining the status quo. The bloc's sanctions on Niger after its 2023 coup, for instance, align suspiciously with France's outrage over the junta's anti-French policies. Enter John Mahama, Ghana's newly inaugurated president and a respected figure in Pan-African circles. Appointed as a special envoy to the AES states, Mahama has embarked on a diplomatic tour, meeting Traoré in Ouagadougou on March 10, 2025, and planning visits to Mali and Niger. ECOWAS leaders, particularly Ouattara, appear to be leaning on Mahama's credibility to broker a return. Ouattara's influence in ECOWAS is formidable. His close ties to France, forged through decades of economic and political alignment, make him a natural conduit for Parisian interests. Sources within ECOWAS suggest that France has quietly pressured the bloc to restore its authority, fearing the AES's pivot to Russia and its potential to inspire other African nations to follow suit. A leaked diplomatic cable, unverified but widely circulated, allegedly shows French officials urging Ouattara to use all levers to prevent the AES from gaining legitimacy. But here's where the plot thickens. Mahama, despite his mandate, has not once publicly demanded that Burkina Faso, Mali, or Niger return to ECOWAS. In Ouagadougou, he spoke of rebuilding trust and collaboration, even hinting at coexistence between ECOWAS and the AES. Mahama has always been known for his Pan-African roots, and this stance reflects that deeply. There's a breakdown of trust, and while rebuilding it will take time, we must work toward mutual respect, even if we're not in the same regional body. Mahama's unique perspective is certainly shaping the conversation around the future of West African unity. This stance has baffled some ECOWAS hardliners, but delighted Pan-Africanists who see it as a tacit acknowledgement of the AES's legitimacy. Mahama's history as ECOWAS chairman from 2014 to 2016 and his reputation as a mediator during crises like the Ebola outbreak give him a unique perspective. Unlike Ouattara, whose ties to France raise suspicions, Mahama's Ghana has no colonial baggage with Paris, positioning him as a bridge rather than a bulldozer. Why then does Mahama avoid the hard sell? The answer lies in his Pan-African roots and Ghana's legacy as a cradle of anti-colonial resistance. From Kwame Nkrumah's vision of a united Africa to Jerry Rawlings' defiance of Western hegemony, Ghana has long been a moral compass for the continent. Mahama, a student of this history, understands that forcing the AES states back into ECOWAS would betray the very principles of self-determination that Nkrumah championed. His closed-door meeting with Traoré reportedly focused on practical cooperation, trade routes, counterterrorism, and a proposed Accra-Ouagadougou flight, not on ultimatums. Moreover, Mahama's reticence may reflect a strategic calculation. ECOWAS's credibility is waning. The bloc's inability to stem the tide of coup, its heavy-handed sanctions, and its perceived alignment with Western powers have eroded its moral authority. Forcing the AES states back risks further alienating them and inspiring others to leave. Guinea, another ECOWAS member, has already expressed sympathy for the AES model. Mahama, ever the pragmatist, may be betting on a reformed ECOWAS that can coexist with emerging alliances rather than a domineering one that crumbles under its own contradictions. As for France's role, the evidence is circumstantial but compelling. French media outlets like RFI have ramped up coverage of ECOWAS's unity efforts, often framing the AES as a destabilizing force backed by Russia, a narrative that conveniently obscures France's own destabilizing legacy in the Sahel. Ouattara's frequent consultations with French President Emmanuel Macron, coupled with Ivory Coast's status as a linchpin of the CFA franc zone, fuel suspicions that Paris is pulling strings behind the scenes. Yet Mahama's refusal to play enforcer suggests that France's leverage may be weaker than assumed. The AES states, buoyed by popular support and new partnerships, are no longer the pliable pawns of yesteryear. The rise of the AES is more than a regional spat. It's a litmus test for Africa's future. For every African who cheers the exit from ECOWAS, There's a dream of a continent unshackled from neo-colonial chains, a continent where resources benefit the people, not foreign boardrooms, where security is defined by African soldiers, not foreign bases, where unity is forged on African terms, not dictated by Brussels or Paris. Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have lit a spark, and Mahama's delicate dance reflects the tightrope all African leaders must walk, balancing regional solidarity with the fierce winds of sovereignty. As the AES rolls out its biometric passports and joint military plans, the message to ECOWAS and to France is clear: Africa is waking up. Ouattara may push and France may prod, but Mahama's silence speaks louder than their pleas. It's a silence that says, let Africans decide. Before I conclude, I must say this. Across the motherland, a wind of change is blowing, fierce and unapologetic, stirring the souls of Africans, from the Sahel to the Cape, from the Horn to the Atlantic shores. At the heart of this awakening stands Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a young revolutionary whose steely resolve has ignited a fire of hope in a continent long shackled by the chains of neocolonialism. Alongside him, the military leaders of Mali and Niger, Colonel Assimi Goïta and General Abdourahmane Tiani, form a trio of defiance, a beacon of resistance against the suffocating grip of external powers. Their bold actions expelling foreign troops, rejecting Western dictates, and forging the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, signal a new dawn for Africa, one where the continent's destiny is shaped by its own hands, not dictated from Paris, Washington, or Brussels. It is a call that every African leader must heed if we are to rise as a great continent united and sovereign, free from the meddling of those who see us as pawns in their global chess game. For too long, Africa has been a playground for foreign interests, its leaders reduced to puppets dancing to the tunes of imperial masters. From the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, where our lands were carved up like a butcher's slab, to the modern era of IMF loans, military bases, and trade agreements that siphon our wealth, the story has been one of exploitation dressed as partnership. The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, once heralded as a vehicle for regional unity, has morphed into a tool of Western influence, imposing sanctions on its own kin at the behest of former colonial powers like France. The juntas of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger saw through this facade, choosing instead to break free from ECOWAS in January 2024 and chart their own course. Their exit was not a mere political maneuver, it was a declaration of war against the status quo, a resounding no to the idea that Africa's future must be scripted by outsiders. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, at just 36 years old, embodies the spirit of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revered revolutionary leader, assassinated in 1987 by forces aligned with Western interests. Traoré's words ring with the same fervor: Africa's time of slavery to Western regimes is over, and the battle for full independence has begun, either homeland or death. This is not hyperbole, it is a rallying cry rooted in the reality of a continent bled dry by resource theft, puppet governments, and foreign military occupation. Since seizing power in September 2022, Traoré has moved decisively, expelling French troops, dissolving a government beholden to external agendas, and aligning with Mali and Niger to form the AES. This alliance, formalized in July 2024, unites 72 million people under a banner of self-reliance, vowing to tackle jihadist threats not with Western handouts, but with a joint force of 5,000 troops, equipped and directed by Africans for Africans. For decades, France maintained a stranglehold on its former colonies through the CFA franc, military bases, and economic agreements that favored Paris over Ouagadougou, Bamako, or Niamey. The presence of French forces in the Sahel, ostensibly to combat terrorism, did little to stem the tide of violence. Instead, it entrenched dependency and fueled resentment. Traoré, Goïta, and Tiani have said enough. Why must other African leaders follow this path? Because the alternative is a continent forever on its knees, begging for crumbs while its gold, uranium, and oil enrich foreign capitals. Consider the numbers. Africa holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves, yet 60% of its people live on less than $2 a day. The Democratic Republic of Congo produces 70% of the world's cobalt critical for electric vehicles, yet its people languish in poverty while multinational corporations rake in billions. Nigeria pumps oil worth $50 billion annually, but its refineries lie dormant, forcing it to import fuel. This is the legacy of external domination, a system designed to keep Africa as a supplier of raw materials, never a manufacturer, never a master of its own wealth. Traoré and his Sahelian comrades offer a blueprint for reversal. Their vision is not just about kicking out foreign troops, it's about building something new. Burkina Faso has launched an agricultural strategy to achieve food sovereignty by 2025, a move that echoes Sankara's push for self-sufficiency. Mali and Niger, rich in gold and uranium respectively, are exploring ways to nationalize their resources, ensuring that profits benefit their people, not foreign shareholders. The AES is not just a military pact, it's a promise of economic integration, of trade that prioritizes African needs over Western profits. Imagine an Africa where Kenya's tea, Ghana's cocoa, and South Africa's wine flow freely across borders, unhindered by tariffs imposed by global trade bodies serving northern interests. Imagine an Africa where Egypt's engineering, Nigeria's tech hubs, and Algeria's energy expertise converge to power a continental renaissance. Yet, this vision demands courage that many African leaders lack. Too many still bow to the IMF and World Bank, accepting loans with strings that strangle sovereignty. Too many host foreign military bases from Djibouti to Ghana, trading dignity for dollars. Too many parrot the language of partnership with the West, ignoring the asymmetry that defines these relationships. Traoré's Burkina Faso, Goïta's Mali, and Tiani's Niger have shown that defiance is possible even in the face of sanctions, propaganda, and threats. When ECOWAS imposed inhumane sanctions on Niger after its 2023 coup, Mali and Burkina Faso stood in solidarity, pledging to defend their neighbor against any military intervention. This is Pan-Africanism in action, not the hollow speeches of summits, but the grit of brothers shielding brothers. To my fellow Africans, from the bustling markets of Lagos to the highlands of Ethiopia, this is our moment. The time has come for Africa to rise, united and sovereign, free from the chains of neo-colonialism. The drumbeat of a new era is here, and it is up to us to answer its call.